Welcome into another edition of Music Fanimal here on Fanimal Radio. I'm Tony Lombardi, and my special guest this week is the author of what's been described as fat blues music. Welcome in, Kelly Bell. Kelly, good to see you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, man.
My pleasure. So I got to read a couple of things I thought were really interesting on your website. It says, this is by Review Magazine, describes the Kelly Bell Band as among the most genre-expanding acts on today's blues scene. Who else can combine elements of hip-hop, funk, and blues-electrified here? Originally formed as the backup band for rock and roll pioneer Bo Diddley, Kelly Bell Band has been touring the world ever since, entertaining fans in Japan, Spain, Italy, Greece, Cuba, Germany, and more. Also added that imagine, this is a description of the Kelly Bell Band.
Oh, I can do that part for you.
Okay.
Imagine, if you could imagine, Muddy Waters wearing a Bob Marley t-shirt, riding on Black Sabbath tour, busting away to a Parliament Funkadelic concert, listening to a James Brown 8-track tape, humming a Run DMC song with a Nighthawks ball cap on, all in the glory of Bo Diddley with just a hint of B.B. King. That would be merely close to what we do, but only close.
He did that far better than I could have. Nice job, bro. So talk about your musical influence. Obviously, all those are influences, but to get this into a band, and I gotta tell you, if you haven't seen the Kelly Bell Band, folks, talk about energy. Off the hook energy. So talk about how you got your band together, guys that had a common vision, and put this melting pot all together in a way that works.
Well, it started because I was actually a bouncer at a small club called the 8x10 in Baltimore, in Federal Hill. Yeah. And this was way back in the day, and I was studying for my master's and working real hard at that, and I went to the club owner, and like all club owners, Giles Cook at that time, Abigail owns it now, but he said to me, I don't have a gig for your band. I was in a band called Fat Tuesday. I was a background singer. I would step out and maybe sing 2 or 3 songs, mostly covers, in a 3-set night. Okay. But my role was pretty much background, congas, supporting the lead singer. So I said, man, I'm looking for a gig for my band. He said, man, I don't have a gig for your band. He said, but I do have a gig if you want to back up Bo Diddley. I'm like, don't be crazy. Of course, we'll want to back up Bo Diddley. At that time, Bo wasn't traveling with his own band. So Bo would show up with a cigar box guitar in one hand and a bag of clothes in the other. And Bo would book a show in like Virginia or DC, and then one in Baltimore. They pay him $5,000 a night. DC would be responsible for his lodging. Baltimore would be responsible for his travel. And both clubs would be responsible for finding him a support band. So the whole gimmick is you go out, you do a whole set, we bring Bo out, he does a set, they clear the house, and then you do it all over again. Bo would give you 2 hours. Now you can have it 2 hours straight, or you can break it up. Of course, they chose to break it up because when you deal with a small club, to be able to afford that, you got to kind of do 2 shows. Right. So you're running everybody in and out. So my very first show was support band for Bo Diddley. So I wanted to be the Baltimore Blues All-Stars because I was in one band, a good friend of mine, Automatic Slim from Automatic Slim and the Ugly Babysitters. Best band name ever. He was in a band called Revtones at the time, and the rhythm section was in the legendary Persuaders from this area. So he said, take the gig, I'll find you musicians. And I said, well, let's be the Baltimore Blues All-Stars. And he said, no, go under your own name. You never know if you want to do this again. Well, Tony, I had no intention of ever doing this again. I didn't have enough material to do it then, to do 2 hours of music at this point. I knew like 8 songs that, now all of a sudden I have to fill 2 different hours of music because a lot of the people that went to the first show walked out the door and walked right back in. And I knew that would happen. So I had to learn this music, and 24 years later and 13 albums later and 32 countries later and all this craziness, man, it's amazing.
Well, what happened that night, despite all the controversy or maybe the hurdles you had to climb that for the 2 different shows? Mm-hmm. What happened that you said, you know what, we can make this work?
You want to know the truth? I have to give credit where it's due. And God rest his soul, man, Bo Diddley fell in love with us, fell in love with me as a person, and took me under his wing and allowed me to be his backup band on the East Coast for about 4 years. Anytime he wanted us and he came to the coast, and we'd get a call, and, hey, I got a show, I need you, and you get your boys together. And it was funny because then the 8x10 would start to get these phone calls and wanted to know when the next time the Kelly Bell Band was playing. Not Bo Diddley, but when the Kelly Bell Band was going to be. The Kelly Bell Band didn't exist. There was no Kelly Bell Band.
You just threw the name out there because the guy told you to.
And imagine how comfortable it was when I'm the bouncer and I might be answering the phone. And they asked, what was the name of that band that played with Bo Diddley? The Kelly Bell Band? I mean, it was weird even saying my own name. And 24 years later, man, I'm still not used to it. I'm still not comfortable. I'm still blown away by all of this.
Besides that, what's the craziest experience that you had with traveling around with Bo?
Oh, Bo was a guy, and being honest, if Bo liked you, he liked you. If he didn't like you, he really didn't like you.
He knew it.
Yeah, he didn't pull any punches. And I mean, these were guys that were, they're ripped off in the business, and you're also talking about they came up in a different time in my culture. So being a black R&B star, Bo was also one of those people who was one of the godfathers of rock and roll, but he was also a blues star too. He was a rhythm and blues star first, which is where rock and roll came from.
Right.
So he was part of the guy bridging that gap, and he told some really serious horror stories about the things that they went through and during that time, and then even coming forward, which is why at the end of his career, he had a different kind of vibe. It was like, you pay me $5,000, and you pay me $5,000, and you pay me $5,000, and you're going to pay for my lodging, you're going to pay for my flight, you're going to pay for my,
That's just the way it is.
And that's it, period. And you're going to pay me in cash, and you're going to pay me before I go on. And I mean, he was very, very structured. He's not the only one that kind of developed that. All of those old blues cats, man. Chuck Berry, Muddy Waters, all of them, kind of got that way towards the end, with the exception of B.B. King. I'm blessed enough to have spent plenty of time with B.B. King as well. And the King was different, obviously, because he was, he was the king, and always will be.
Well, you sound like you have a fascinating journey. How did it start? I mean, when did you wake up and say, besides that day when you were bouncing, that I really, because before that you learned how to play percussion, you were a backup singer. Mm-hmm. So when did it start for you that you said, I want to be a music man?
The truth, I have to give the credit to my father. God rest his soul, and forgive me if I get emotional, because anytime I talk about my father,
please do.
It's very difficult some days. Navy vet during Korea. So when I was a kid, and I grew up in D.C., I grew up on go-go music in D.C. and funk and Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers, and those were my idols, Rare Essence, those guys. But my dad, he was a good man, man. He would take me around Saturday morning, and I had to cut lawns of people who couldn't afford to have their lawns cut. And it was just something that he did. My father also was a mason.
My dad was too.
Yeah, so not something, back in the day, our dads didn't, people talk about being a mason now. Back then, it was all secret handshakes, right, and, meetings in the living room that I wasn't allowed to walk past, things like that. It was a lot of secrecy. Still a lot of secrecy with the organization, but wonderful organization. But my dad also was a guy who worked in an organization called Christmas in April, where they would show up to your house one weekend and literally just help someone who can't afford to get their house together, and didn't by no costs of their own. So they would come in with appliances and painters and all this stuff, and I'll be honest with you, I've never told anybody this. There was a point where my father and I were on welfare. We were not doing well, and he had us going out and doing this charitable stuff. And having me cutting grass. I was like, shouldn't I be cutting lawns and making money?
Despite needing the money, he still did it for the people.
He wasn't built that way, man. He was an amazing man. So he would make me listen to the Bama Hour, WPFW, public radio, in D.C. And so we drive around. I'm going, Dad, if I have to work for free and cut people's houses that I don't even know, can you at least let me listen to my music? And he would say, that stuff you like, this is where it all came from. The blues is the root of all popular music. And he would make me listen to this, gut bucket shows that I was like, oh man, come on, give me something else. But then he took me to see B.B. King. And it was Clarence Carter, Bobby Blue Bland, and B.B. King. Now, we already spoke about the King. He's the King. They call him that for a reason. Clarence Carter had some language in his stuff that a 9-year-old probably definitely didn't understand. Definitely didn't understand. He had a thing. Well, I'm not going to quote it because we probably couldn't air it if I did. But Bobby Blue Bland came out, and Bobby being my music idol now, he wasn't then because I didn't know anything about him. I was 9 years old, and I come out. Bobby does his set, and when he's done, and it's the old Warner Theater DC before they renovated it, the lights go up. And every woman in the building is fanning themselves frantically. I mean, 8 to 80, blind, cripple, or crazy. Every single one of them was just fanning themselves. And I'm like, Dad, what is this? Like, I didn't know what it meant to be flustered. So I'm like, what is this? What? My father was just like, you'll understand someday, son. You know, I mean, that's not a conversation. Yeah, we're 9 years old. That's not the first time you having that conversation.
Right.
So I found out that, that they were so affected by what he did, not just his stage presence and his voice and the entertainment factor, but just everything he did. He just changed their mindset and their vibe, and it spoke to me. And I was like, I don't know what he's doing, but I know I want to do that. I want to have that effect on people. I want to bring that kind of joy, and then learning how to be an entertainer over the years. And also embracing what my father did in regard to service. It has allowed the Kelly Bell Band to use our platform in so many ways. There's actually a documentary coming out on us later this year that'll be on Netflix.
Netflix, right?
And it's also entitled "Know My Name," which is the title of our new record.
Right.
And it really does talk about the journey of the last 24 years, but it goes back further than that because it talks about my whole life. And and my family and the things that we've done. Fortunately, I work with Navy Entertainment and traveling the world, entertaining our United States military, all branches.
So 24 years, 13 records.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about when you first. What was the first record you did?
Fat Blues Music was the very first album.
98.
Yeah, 1998, and the first thing that we had was a little orange cassette. They had 6 songs on it. I'm fortunate to.
At least you were beyond 8 tracks, right?
Right, barely though, barely. So we printed a few thousand of those and went right through them, and then CDs got popular, and then I was like, look, we can't just duplicate this little live cassette thing that we did. We need to put a real CD together, and we found ourselves at Right Way Studios, and cutting this new CD, which ended up Fat Blues Music broke all the records in Baltimore, local records in Baltimore. There used to be a chain of stores, record and tape traders, very famously in Baltimore, and we stayed in their top 20 for 32 weeks. Which was insane. I'm like, Jay-Z and Beyonce and, and Miley Cyrus, and they never stayed in there for 20
That was in
weeks.
records and tape traders?
And that listing for sales.
Okay.
So it was amazing.
And they went through all the Baltimore and DC area, right?
Yeah, and our CD sold unbelievably. The very first year it came out, and it just kept going. That first CD just was crazy for people, which is weird for me, because I felt like we've gotten better and the music has grown so much, but people are people are very, very attached to that first thing, it speaks to them in different kinds of ways that we've found out over the years.
Now, it's interesting you brought that up because I wanted to ask you, I was listening to an interview on Sirius XM Radio, and I think it was Eddie Vedder who was hosting the Beatles channel.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about, even correlated to Pearl Jam, he said that, a lot of times fans want you to stay the same. They want 10 all the time in his case, right?
Right.
And he said a band just doesn't want to do that. They want to progress. He said, think about if the Beatles, all they did was meet the Beatles over and over again.
Right.
Where would that have gone?
Right.
So in that regard, talk about how your music's progressed from that 98 record up to the one that you're going to release on April 26th of this month.
Sure. The production value-wise, obviously it's different because the technology is so different. We used to record everything to tape. And it would take forever when you're like, oh, I messed up that line. Can I do that again? Sure. And you hear chick 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 chick, having to get back to this 8-inch tape, or 4-inch tape or whatever they were using at that time. And then ADATs came along and everything else. So the technology has definitely changed now that everyone is using, computers now to record directly into. We still, though, take that music, dump it onto tape, and then bring it back into the computer to be able to manipulate it, because there's nothing like the warmth of an album. And so we never wanted to lose that feel. So even with our current record, and every single one we've done, they all have been dumped to tape to warm up and then put back into the computer to be able to manipulate. In regard to the styles of music, there have been several guys in the band over the years, and their expertise has also been welcomed into my ADD view of music, which is pretty much all over the place. Fat blues music really keeps one foot firmly planted into the blues world, because I truly am a blues man. Blues saved my life and so many times I can't even, when I was a kid, contemplating to be or not to be. Mm-hmm. Blues reminded me that none of us are alone in our walk through this world. So it always gave you something that was familiar. No matter how you were feeling, you could put on a blues record. I could put on a Muddy Waters record, a John Lee Hooker record, and he already wrote a song about it. And then all of a sudden you don't feel alone anymore.
Right.
And I needed to bring that and present that to other people, and then say, like, look, I am someone that attempted to take his own life as a teenager. And this music literally saved me. Saved me so much that through the training of my father and my work in mental health with kids and difficulties, it has changed and sculpted how the music is delivered as well.
Is that how you got into the whole mental health aspect of your education?
Yeah, most definitely. Again, coming from my father, and just the thought of service, knowing that service is greater than you. And this is coming from a man who, although I consider myself a very spiritual person, my father was not. My father was not a spiritual man. He was just a good dude. And he wasn't doing it to try to get into heaven. He wasn't doing it because a preacher told him to do it or trained him to do it, even though his grandfather was a preacher. He just did it because he was a good dude. And it shaped and molded my personality, and how I attempt to live my life. I have 2 goals in life. The first one is to greet the sun with the intention to be a better man than I was the day before. And goal number 2 is never ever forget goal number 1.
Nice.
So with all of that in mind, it has molded and shaped my musical interest, because I used to be in a heavy metal band called Border Patrol when I was much, much younger. So if you're hearing me scream Judas Priest covers and Accept covers coming from a 300-pound black guy with dreadlocks, you're looking at me like, what is that? Is he singing Black Sabbath? Like, I don't understand.
That's got to tell you, is one of the big attractions of your band, is that you guys are all over the place.
Because we're insane.
So insane energy is what these guys are all about. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to show you Kelly's new record, Long Train. So stay right there. This is Music Fanimal on Fanimal Radio.
Long train, long train. Hey little girl, what you doing now? Why you running around my to be facing some wild time. Feel like I need an alibi, and I just found mine. I'm the most wanted man in this town. I stole a lot of hearts, but I ain't guilty, cause it was mine from the very start. You with me now, so I don't think that this here is love in vain. Make a decision, clock is ticking, you better get on. Long train, long train, long train.
Playback.
What are you doing?
I'm playing my
The
solo.
video is over. Get down from there before you hurt yourself.
Man, this is my moment. You're always holding me back.
Wrap it up.
Long Train. Wow. What energy.
Is that enough for you?
That's a lot of energy there. So tell us a little bit about the inspirational drive behind that song.
Well, as you know, I mean, Fat Blues music is a very eclectic approach to music. So to be able
That's
to...
an understatement.
Yeah, probably. I mean, we're a blues band with a rock and roll energy,
Right.
and stage presence, So that video, we wanted to put something out that kind of showed people what our live show was. It's so funny because we're one of those bands that some people don't get us until they come see us, because Fat Blues music is so diverse and always has been. This isn't, people are more eclectic now. People always go, oh, I love all kinds of music. And you go over their house and they got 4 CDs, 2 are still in the wrapper, and 3 of them are all the same genre. But that's not, you come to see one of our shows, you might hear 4 or 5 different genres in one set just from us.
It's an experience.
It is. It truly is. And you get jokes and you get all this other stuff. There's a real organic piece of the show that, every show is different. We don't use set lists. So they're all up here. So it depends on what the crowd is doing for what song I call next. So
And your band's tight enough to know where to take it.
So here's a little secret that I never really tell people. I probably shouldn't now, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I will look to someone in the band that starts the next song that I want to play, mouth it to them, or give a hand gesture. They already know what to do. Nothing else needs to be said. And it's basically on me reading the crowd. So if we just did a nice jump blues tune, one of our jump blues tunes, and everybody's having a great time, and they don't look like they need to breathe yet, we're going to come at you with something else to keep you moving. But if it's looking like, okay, you guys might need a break just for a second, because you can't, you can't do that to them. You got to tell a story. You got to kind of tell a story when you have a set, and our sets are, often 3 to 4 hours long, one set.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that's another thing that has kind of evolved over the years with the band.
Let's talk about Long Train.
So Long Train is basically, we want to do a video presentation, a video at least, to give people an idea of what the band was like live. So when you see the video, as you've seen the video, you can see that we're fun, we're goofballs, it's high energy, but it's also extraordinary musicianship. I've surrounded myself with guys, with players. My entire career, I've always been surrounded with guys, with players. So Long Train has that, that a little bit of a rock and roll edge, and definitely the bluesy edge. And I guess if you could imagine Ozzy Osbourne leaving Black Sabbath in his early days and just being in a blues band, which honestly Black Sabbath wasn't that far away from it. Some of their original recordings when they were doing like Blue Suede Shoes and stuff like that was very, very bluesy.
Geezer Butler.
Yeah, Geezer and Tony. I mean, Tony Iommi is very underrated guitar player. So we kind of want to have that Sabbath vibe with Long Train, but not losing who we are too. So it just gives you a little taste, I think.
Speaking of who we are, talk about some of your bandmates. How long you guys have been together and how you got together and all those good things.
It's been 24 years. Right now we have Ryan Fowler playing guitar, Eric Robinson playing guitar, Frankie Hernandez playing bass, John Robert Buell, who plays drums, Rasan Wordsley Eldridge, who is a trumpet player, a singer, a rapper. He's a poet. He's
Word slave?
Yes, he's our do-all dude. And one of the guys for blues fans and blues aficionados, Dane Paul Russell is our harmonica player. And Dane was the harmonica player for the legendary Bobby Parker Band, who also appears on one of our records. Bobby and I were friends for many years. And he was, again, like Albert Collins and Smokey Wilson and Bobby Bland, those guys that kind of, James Cotton, all those guys that reached back and helped me out. You know, Mark Winter from the Nighthawks, all of these guys that really have helped me out in my career over the years. And he traveled in the Bobby Parker Band for 15 years. And so Dane is a well-seasoned, very famous blues man. And when Bobby passed away, Dane was kind of, trying to figure out what he was going to do. And so we were recording our last album, which is Live from Quiet Waters Park. Now, we've got like 5 albums that are live, all different venues, different setups. The Quiet Waters is a 23-piece big band. So it's like a greatest hits. It's a double CD, but it's a 23-piece band. 9 horns, background singers, extra guitar players. Carl Filipiak made an appearance. Dean Rosenthal made an appearance. I mean, it was just this amazing thing that we wanted to do that really we toured with for a whole summer. But once we did it at Quiet Waters Park, we did it there a couple times, the beginning of the season, the end of the season, we wanted to record it. So we had Dane be a part of that. And it just went so well that Ryan Fowler, our guitar player, said, man, you should really ask Dane if he wants to join the band full time and be part of the close-knit 7 band that, the 7 of us that travel everywhere. And I presented that to him, not thinking he would say yes. And Dane said, man, you don't know how long I've been asking. I've been waiting for you to ask me that question. And I was like completely blown away. And so now we have Dane Paul Russell, who's been with us for a few years now too. So
it's an interesting journey along the way. When you look back in time, you piece it together.
Oh, yeah.
You don't really know it's part of the journey until you look back in retrospect.
And I've known Dane for years. Dane had played on our records as a guest several times. He played, he's the harmonica player on Ain't Like It Used to Be, which is our second album, the title track of our second album. And now the 13th album, he's actually a member of the band recording. So, I mean, it shows how close-knit, that the music community really is, even though we have been separated for over a decade.
Now, you guys have won quite a few awards, and you've been named the best blues band in the Mid-Atlantic region for 12 years in a row.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent coming out of the Mid-Atlantic area. And you're top dog for a dozen years. It's pretty impressive.
It's scary.
Humbling?
Yes. More than humbling, man. With bands like the Nighthawks and Deanna Bogart and the Crawdaddies and Dean Rosenthal, and there's just so many, too many to really name. It's amazing that we're even mentioned in that company. To say nothing to have won so many times. We won the Maryland Music Award for Best Blues Band year before last, and then last year we won Best Funk Band, which is indicative of pretty much what fat blues music is. You don't really know where to put it. So it's been an asset for us for a long time because, again, listeners are so eclectic these days. But it's also been difficult for us financially and, just business-wise, because you don't know what bin. Record stores have never known what bin to put us in. And that's a very popular thing now, to be that kind of artist and see different collaborations. But when we started doing it 24 years ago, some people just thought of it as a mess. And like the blues community, that didn't reject us, but they were kind of hands-off because they didn't understand it. And it took guys like Mark Winter and Deanna Bogart and again, one of my mentors, Albert Collins, to come in and say, no, you guys got this wrong. This is real here.
I remember the Almighty Senators were a lot like that.
Mm-hmm. And who have
they had a lead drummer. Guy was in the front.
Landis Expandis. So we have a song on our album Reincarnated, which is Porno Star. And it's actually an Almighty Senator song. And Landis actually we brought him as a guest to come in and sing.
That's on the new record?
No, that's on our album Reincarnated.
Okay.
That was like album number 5. So we've been pretty tight with the Almighty Senators for many years. Their horn section appears on probably half our records. Their old bass player, Brett Sharborough, was actually in the Kelly Bell Band for quite a few years too. So again, that nature, that closed nature of the music community, which is much smaller than you would imagine.
You mentioned the financial pressures of being in a band. Talk about that a little bit because, as someone that isn't a musician, but certainly an admirer of it all, it seems to me that bands today are making their money with touring. They're not making money on record sales anymore. It used to be the other way around when you would support your new album with the tour.
Right.
But the tour wasn't how you were making your bread and butter. It was the record sales.
Right. Well, I mean, if you really want to talk about it, I have a very good friend of mine, Edwin McCain. And Edwin had written a song called I'll Be. And it's, I turned on the TV one day and Edwin was singing the national anthem at the Daytona 500. It doesn't get much bigger.
Right.
But when, I guess it was Napster that came in? Was it Napster?
The first pirating?
Yeah, the first pirating thing. There
was LimeWire or something like that.
All of those streaming things really did affect the record industry. But the record industry also hurt itself because they were charging people so much money. And, it just kept getting more and more ridiculous. And record companies charge so much money to the artist to have your own record. So let's say you have some big record deal, and the record company says, we will produce your record and reproduce your record. So you don't say how many units are getting pushed. You don't know how much a unit is costing. You don't know anything about the bottom line. They say, we're going to give you this lump sum of money. This is what you're going to use to record. And then we're going to subtract that later from you. And we kind of got on board with the whole game because I'm lucky to be friends with a lot of folks who have done very, very well in the entertainment business. So I've gotten to see behind the curtain quite a bit, which is why we started our own record company a long time ago. So we do things a little bit differently. We have different relationships with different companies. And my company, Fabulous Records, they produce all the records. We do our own promotion, everything. And it was unheard of 24 years ago. That was definitely, because it was record deal. And the manager that we had back in the day was saying, this is what you got to do to get a record deal. And I'm like, man, I'm a blues man. I don't care about that. I said, let me explain something to you. You're looking for us to be real hot for the next 2 years. I'm a blues man. I'm going to do this long after I have to sit down to keep doing it. Okay? So longevity means something to me. Plus, I'm also giving back to the music that saved my life. So I don't care about that. Like, would I like a bigger house? Of course I would. Do I always want to see a bunch of hot women right down front screaming every word to every song? Of course I would. But there are also several charities and several organizations that keep their doors open because we do one show a year for them, and they're able to help a lot of different populations, from kids with autism to homeless teenagers and runaways, and we have, to the military. And all of that is important. And when you're talking about fat blues music, it's not just entertainment.
You know a lot about giving back, and mentioned off the air before about this next song we're going to feature, Homegrown. Tell a little bit about that story, because it's a fascinating story.
So it's actually, we were playing the Trifecta Festival. It was a big festival in the Maryland State Fairgrounds. It was a terrible storm that day, and it was the day that Ellicott City, Maryland was like an old town type town in Maryland, and literally just washed away.
It was horrible. It was all over the nation.
Yeah, it was right. It was an international story. Well, we finished our set and we went home. It was one of those days we actually get to go home because you weren't too far from the house and you get to be in your own house after the show. So I come in, I sit down, and I turn on the TV because it's stormy. I turned on the TV to see if I still had TV because it was that big a storm. wondering whether the satellite was knocked out. And the news comes on, and I see a car floating past our keyboard player, Kirk Myers. His wife has a shop in Ellicott City, a little curio type thing. And I'm watching cars wash down, and the water is coming up past the window in the front of the store. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what is this about? So I called Kirk in New York, and they are actually having dinner in a restaurant in New York. They were out there vacationing and had no idea what was going on. And so I tell him, he of course has a horrid look on his face, I'm sure, because his wife is sitting across from him. She has no idea what's going on, but those text messages are getting ready to come in. And I'm like, Kirk, dude, you better say something to her right now. And so he got off the phone, he did. It didn't go well. Kirk wouldn't mind me saying that it did not go well. And how could it? It was something that they had put 10, 15 years of their life into.
And it's more than just the story.
It's more. It was so much more. And not just for her, but for all those folks in Ellicott City. And we played the Ellicott City Main Street Music Festival every year. We headlined it every year on a certain stage. And now there wasn't going to be any festival because there was no town. And so they were trying to figure out how they could help the town. So they came to us. And we have a song on our first record called Homegrown. And the hook is Homegrown, So Glad to Meet You. And they said they would like to use the hook as a comeback, as their comeback theme. And I said, well, if you're going to do it as a comeback theme, then you have to allow us to re-record it and make it make sense for your journey. And so there's actually two different versions of Homegrown. There's Homegrown, the original, and then there's a version called Homegrown Stand Up, which is different lyrics, has a rap in it, which is things that the original version doesn't have. So while we were doing this, these guys that Stereoscope, the guys who are actually making the documentary about me and about the band and our journey as a band, at first they were just going to do a regular concert video. They just wanted to shoot a concert video. But in hanging backstage and learning more about us and learning about the things that we do in regard to service, they just really felt like this should be a movie and not a concert video. And someone should be telling the story of the Kelly Bell Band and why it exists, and what it does. And so they decided to kind of document Homegrown Stand Up. So it's kind of a We Are the World kind of thing for different artists in the area. So I got on the phone, and within 1 week, I was able to call in guys from JobWorks and the Almighty Senators and Fertile Ground and Love the Poets. I brought poets and Black Root and Brooks Long. There's so many great artists. And when you see that video, Homegrown Stand Up, you're going to see all these other people. But the other cool thing that we were able to do is I actually brought people from Ellicott City into the studio to do hand claps and all that kind of thing. So we found ourselves at Meriwether Post Pavilion. Meriwether was so generous to actually donate their space and have the Main Street Music Festival there so that it could still happen. And now, all of a sudden, here we are at Meriwether Post Pavilion, a place that I've stood in the crowd and seen every artist that you can imagine. Now I'm standing up here headlining to thousands and thousands of people. And backstage, there are hundreds of people who have been affected the year prior to that flood. Well, what they didn't know, I invited them to the side of both sides of the stage so that they could come out and clap hands. Same thing that we had done in the video. What they didn't know is that somewhere in the middle of the song, I waved everybody in. And so if you see footage of that, there's literally hundreds of people standing on the stage clapping and crying because they were able to forget about everything. They lost everything. You're talking about losing your house, your business, your dream, but for that one moment, we got to be the one thing that brought them all back together in that festival. And it was awesome. And it was the first time we had played that song. We had it together. The video is really a documentary of us putting that together. So you see all these different people who are not in the band and were just lending their talents to this film. And and even in the DVD, it talks about in our documentary that's coming out. It talks about the struggle we had to kind of recreate it. We had a week to recreate a song that I've been singing for 20 years. And now it has different, now it has different words.
Right.
So, that was a challenge as well. And also you're talking about standing up in the Meriwether Post Pavilion, a place that holds, 20,000 plus people. And now I'm singing a brand new song with new lyrics that I've never sung before in front of people. So everything
Did you
about
have a
it.
cheat sheet?
No. Everything about it was a challenge, though. I'm not above a cheat sheet, though. Don't get me wrong. But no, that one I needed to commit myself to it because I was asking everyone else, including the folks there, to commit to it. And that's another example of the service that the Kelly Bell Band has been able to do.
Now, I love the Netflix documentaries on bands. I could just watch those forever.
You're gonna love ours.
And so I had to ask, how did they approach you, or how did you connect with Netflix, and when will it be available?
That's my manager David Snowden is taking the ball on all of that stuff. But I know they wanted to delay things because with the record coming out right now, there's so many amazing things happening for this band and for me. We've done movies and commercials and TV shows, videos. Even The Wire used our music, and it's been amazing. And now this is the first studio record that we put out in years, and I didn't realize people were waiting for this, and it's crazy. It's like the Long Train, the song is being played on all of these stations around the country. And I don't know how it happened. I don't even have a physical copy of the CD right now myself. And it's all over the United States already. And I'm humbled by that. They pay me to do what I would do for free. So, I get the greatest job in the world, man.
So when you look back at this, what will define success for you with this record? This new record that you haven't been in the studio for, what, you say, 5 years?
Yeah, well, we've been in the studio, but we've been mixing on live records. So the last two records was our 20th anniversary was Coming Home, live from the 8x10, which is a live record that was just the band, And then we had the Quiet Waters record, which is the 23-piece big band. It was an extravagant thing, Something really cool about that particular record, well, I guess it's cool. I had issue with it at first, but Word Slave told me he's the one that convinced me that I needed to put this particular song on. There's a song called Down in the Bottom that is from my very first record that's on that. And even in the footage, there's some footage from that show in the documentary. And you can hear it even in the recording. My voice is breaking up. And I'm still a perfectionist. I don't want people hearing my voice breaking up on the recording. So I wasn't going to put that song on it. Word Slave said, you have to. It's the most genuine thing you've ever done. The backstory is my father had passed away. And the day my father died, the following day, within 24 hours, we had 3 shows the next day. And, my band thought, hey man, did we cancel anything? I was like, that's not who my father was. My father told me, you get up and go to work. So we got up and went to work. But I'm also an artist. I'm not just an entertainer, I'm an artist, which means I'm going to put my joy, I'm going to put my thoughts, I'm going to put my pain on the stage, and then let you be the judge. And you take what you need from it, or throw away what you don't. So I was standing on stage and I had said that this song is dedicated to my father. I lost him yesterday. And you're talking about, we're at this big festival. It's show number 2 of 3 that day. And all of a sudden there's a complete whisper over the crowd. And which wasn't what I was trying to do. I even said in that moment, please allow me to be selfish for a moment and be self-indulgent. And I would like to dedicate this song to my father.
The quiet was respect.
It was amazing. And I get halfway through the song and I lost it. I hadn't cried about it at all. And now these tears are pouring out of my face. My voice is cracking all over the place. I'm looking around. The band is crying because they knew my father was gone. And I'm looking out in the crowd, and half the people are crying. And I'm going, what did I just do to this show? What did I do to my band? What did I do to these people? Why did I do this? This was too self-indulgent. And that was the last song too. And I was such a mess. I wouldn't have been able to go on any further anyway. So I always go to the merchandise stand after the shows because, well, 2 reasons, honestly. One, we sell 40% more merchandise when I go there and I'm signing CDs. But it's also a way for me to be able to connect, another way to connect with the audience. That's a really strong part of our show. So I'm such a mess. It's hot. I'm sweating like a pig. I'm crying. I don't know if it's the sweat or the tears that are making my eyes burn. So I got a towel and I'm trying to dry my face, and I get over to the merchandise booth. They walk me over. I got my back turned. I get my face together. I grab a piece of gum and try to make myself feel better, and I turn around, and there's 200 people in line, and they're all patient. No one's doing the, hey, how long is this going to be? Every person stopped to tell me their story. And some of their stories involved their grandmother, or their dad, or their best friend, or whomever. But it was all joy. None of it was in sadness. They all wanted to share, and many of them were crying, most of them were crying, but they thanked me. And here I am on stage thinking, I just ruined your day. You came to a festival to have a beer, party with your friends, have a great time, and I got you crying about your dead grandmother. And she's like, no, you gave me an opportunity to think about that. And it had been too long. And they appreciated the fact that I put that on the stage. And we've had moments like that that have been so defining for us. We wrote a song called Don't Go. That's on our album, Should Have Been You. It's on the album, Should Have Been You. And this guy comes to a show, and he walks up to Ryan, our guitar player. He says, I just want to tell you something about that song. He says, you got to play Don't Go. I'm sure. Like, anytime you request on our music, if you come up and request Freebird, it's not happening. But if you come up and request Don't Go, we might be able to work that in, So he says this to Ryan. He said, let me explain why. He said, my wife and I, 37 years, broke up. She left me for another dude. Just decided she didn't want to be with me anymore. And rolled out. And he said, it was a 2-year period. And that whole time, she's filing for divorce and everything. And he wanted her back. And he made a zillion attempts. Flowers, messages, showed up at her job, everything he could do to try to, and she wasn't having it. And the guy told me, and told Ryan, that he had planned to end his life. He couldn't go on without her. After 37 years, he just couldn't do it. And he didn't want to start over again. And he said a last-ditch effort, and I don't know if this was a see what you made me do thing, or, I don't know where he was going with this, but he called her up, he pushed play on the CD player, and he held the phone up. He didn't say a word. Hello, nothing. He said nothing. He played Don't Go. And he had all the intention in the world that was going to be his last night. And as soon as the song was over, he didn't say anything. He just hung up the phone. 45 minutes later, she was at his apartment door with a bag in her hand. And they're back together.
How long ago was that?
That guy told us this story about a year and a half ago.
That's an amazing story.
And we've met them several times now. And so he's telling me the story. I got tears in my eyes. I'm standing at the booth. There are children around trying to figure out why I'm crying. Ryan's crying. He's crying. His wife comes up. She's got 2 cups in her hand, and she's going, oh, God, he told you the story, didn't he? And we're going, yes, you did. And you have that kind of effect, man. Financially, you do take a lot of hits, but that is so much more than any dollar sign. It's more than, You know, the percentage you pay the agent, what the sound guy gets, what the light guy gets, what the proprietor, the cut that the proprietor takes, you know, your agent's fee. You know, I mean, honestly, by the time it gets down to your check, you know, there have been moments when you're lucky if you can eat a meal that night or put gas back in the bus, you know. That's just the nature of the business, you know. But when you compare that to a guy that comes up and said, "You didn't just save my marriage, you saved my life," you can't put a price on that.
No, you can't.
No.
This has been amazing.
Thank you, man.
What a guy. And tell you what, like I said before, your energy comes through in your shows, but it's obviously driven by a lot of passion. We learned a little bit about you today, so thanks for being here. So we're going to listen to Homegrown Stand-Up, right?
Yeah, man. Enjoy this homegrown stand-up. Kelly Bell Band, the purveyors of fat blues music.
So glad to meet you. So warm like a sunshiny day. When we're standing arm in arm, know that we're here to stay. As we lift our voices throughout, I see better days. But it's for your angelic charms we give thanks and praise. Homegrown, and we're so glad to meet you. See your reflection in us when you see our eyes. Hope the Lord see you with it and the creek don't rise. But we'll wade in the water, man, we gon' rise. Come together like the Beatles, yeah, we hold ties. Affiliates, supporters, fam, and amigos, right? We the people heaven sent, yeah, we on high. Resilience is evident, man, we alright. They tryna put us to bed like we all tired, but you waiting for us to sleep, it's gon' be all night. When it comes to the battle, yeah, we gon' fight. Ain't waiting, it's gon' be on sight. We gon' march your hands in the land where there be no plight. Through darkness and murky waters, there'll be no fright. Found hope like the youngest found Nemo, right? And we can cope, cause we our own heroes, right? We homegrown. Homegrown. And we're so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to meet you, yeah. Homegrown.